Aristotle then turns to different forms of oligarchy in chapter 5 of book 4. Then, in chapter 6, the different forms of democracy and oligarchy are compared to one another. In contrast to democracy, oligarchy is a form of government where only a select group of people has access to power, since some kind of requirement is placed on political participation, which tends to rule out the large number of poor people. This can mean smaller or larger groups based on different criteria. Often the qualification involves possessing a certain amount of wealth or property in order to qualify to hold office or be a participant in government. Oligarchies are often associated with aristocracies in the sense that the power tends to remain in the same families, with fathers passing their wealth and possessions on to their sons. However, Aristotle distinguishes between oligarchies and aristocracies, strictly speaking. He claims that oligarchy is a rule of the few based on specific criteria such as wealth and property. By contrast, aristocracy implies that the few are determined by virtue of their personal qualities. The aristocrats are thought to be better people or more virtuous than the others, and this is thought to give them the right to rule. Thus, the basic principle of aristocracy is virtue, whereas the basic principle of oligarchy is wealth. The people in an aristocracy might overlap to some degree with the group of people in an oligarchy, but there's no guarantee that simply by being rich or in possession of a large amount of property will make one virtuous and thus rightfully aristocratic. This captures the modern intuition of the form of snobbery that we find today among people who have a long tradition of family wealth vis-a-vis the nouveau riche, although the old money might in fact even be less wealthy than the nouveau riche. The former regards the latter with a kind of disdain, seeing them as, so to speak, lesser stock. Aristotle points out that if the requirements for qualification of political participation are less stringent, then the oligarchy begins to approach democracy. In other words, if only a minimum amount of wealth or property is required, then a larger number of people will be able to meet the requirement, and as a result, more people will be involved in the decision-making process of the state. By contrast, if the requirements are quite stringent, demanding a large amount of wealth or property, then an increasingly small number of people will be able to qualify. In such a case, the oligarchy tends to move in the direction of a monarchy, since it disenfranchises the large majority of the population. One important issue in oligarchy is the amount of time that individuals who are busy with their own affairs will actually have for participating in the government. People of great wealth or large estates tend to be very occupied with their own business interests. They thus do not have a large amount of leisure to dedicate to political offices. Therefore, the correct balance must be struck with people who are wealthy enough, but also have the freedom and time required to be politically active.